Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and I just watched episode 9 of The Bad Batch. Obviously, there's going to be a full spoilers review. Wow, a lot of stuff happened. Sometimes it feels like this show, it definitely focuses on the characters, and it has a lot of cameos every once in a while that are really cool. But it feels like sometimes it takes its time getting back to the main plot, which, to be fair, I think we still have... the first season here is supposed to be 16 episodes, so we still have a while. So I'm not freaking out about that, but it does feel good that it seems like 2 episodes in a row now we've gotten some pretty good plot development going, and I kind of hope it keeps going. I'm sure there's going to be more episodes where it's like, all right, we're kind of just going to go on a side adventure, and that's fine. But it does feel nice to it feels like the story is moving forward here. Okay, so wow, first off, the Bad Batch is running away from Crosshair on Braca. They end up having to take the jump to hyperspace there and get out of there, right? And even though they didn't want to, because Omega had just been kidnapped by Cad Bane. And then we basically focus on Omega and Cad Bane and some other characters for pretty much the rest of this episode. So first thing we find out, actually, before we leave the Bad Batch, is it turns out they're studying Omega's blood for some reason. Tech was, and what he sees is that Omega is completely unaltered. That she does not have, not just that she doesn't have a chip in her brain, but she also she does not have any growth serum or whatever they call it, right? The growth enhancements that make them grow twice as fast, right? And she also doesn't have anything that would make her obey orders more, or whatever other conditioning that your standard clone would have. She doesn't have any of that stuff. So she is along with Boba Fett, and they name drop him here, along with Boba Fett, she is a direct genetic copy. They phrase it some other way, but basically that she's not like a clone trooper, and she's definitely not like the Bad Batch. She is pretty much, equally along with Boba Fett. She's as much as an exact copy as you can get. Now she's still, she turned out to be a girl, so it kind of feels like, okay, well, if she's an exact copy, obviously she's not a complete exact copy because she came out female instead of male. But in any case, they say that Boba Fett was codenamed Alpha, and she's codenamed Omega. And they talk about how Boba Fett disappeared at the beginning of the war. So, which is interesting because it's not like Boba Fett is using some alias. He's going around the galaxy saying, "I'm Boba Fett, I'm gonna be a badass," right? So it doesn't feel like it should be that difficult to find, especially since they kind of put the word out to bounty hunters to find Omega. It kind of feels like Boba Fett would be someone that picks up the phone and says, "Hey, I'm a bounty hunter now. I'll go." I don't know. Anyways, so my point is that they could equally be trying to look for Boba Fett, but I guess they find it easier to try and find Omega. So there you go. That's just kind of interesting to see that while all the clones are related, Boba Fett and Omega are kind of on this ultra special level of being hey, we are as exact as a duplicate as you can get, obviously, except one of us is a girl, and so you're not exact duplicate, but you know what I mean. So that's pretty cool. Now, while we learn what Omega's deal is, does this mean then that she is not force sensitive? Because it kind of feels like, when they're looking at her DNA, Tech would have been like, "Oh, hey, you got this really high level of midichlorians in your blood," or something, right? If that was a thing, it kind of feels like he would have been able to detect that. That would have shown up on the scanner saying "Whoa, she's got a crazy amount of midichlorians." Everyone has midichlorians in their blood, but she's got an Jedi force using levels, right? And that didn't come up. So that might be the nail in the coffin for the whole force sensitive theories, which I was kind of beginning to suspect was going to be the case, because while at first it felt like they were definitely kind of teasing that, the last few episodes they kind of haven't. And now especially this seems to be a confirmation that no, she's not force sensitive. So I'm okay with that. You know, we don't need everyone to be force sensitive, right? It feels like you have Cal Kestis, you have Ezra Bridger, you have Baby Yoda. You know, like how many force sensitive children do you need to still be around at this point, right? Because, you know, Order 66 just happened, so you know, I'm okay with this. Now here's the interesting thing: is we still don't know exactly specifically what they want to do with her. We know that she's an exact duplicate, and I guess potentially she could be used to just create a whole nother series of clones, right? Because in the Clone Wars, you know, so much earlier than when this takes place, they actually were talking about how, like, oh yeah, our original samples of Jango Fett's DNA have been running thin, and they talked about that in the Clone Wars. So, you know, if that was maybe a year ago before this happens, you know, it kind of feels like, okay, so they must really be running out. So I don't know if they're literally just trying to create more clones using either her or Boba, or there's something even more different happening here, because that's what it kind of seemed like. It seemed like they were trying to create more enhanced super clones. But anyways, we'll talk about all that. So basically, she's on Cad Bane's ship. She manages to trick his robot. I don't remember the droid's name. And she manages to escape down to this planet where Cad Bane was instructed by not Tanwi. Lama Se and Tanwi. I believe that's the name. I'm so bad with the Kaminoan names. Okay, Lama Su, Lama Su and Tanwi. They are basically the ones that hired the bounty hunters to go try and find Omega, right? And then they're supposed to meet Cad Bane there, deliver the money, but when they get there, they see that Tanwi is dead. She's shot on the ground. So they have officially killed off a character from Attack of the Clones, the movies, which is interesting. I mean, like, you know, all of the Kaminoans, like, we don't see Kamino, we don't hear anything about cloning after a certain period in the timeline, you know, all the way until Rise of Skywalker. So it does feel like, yeah, something happens to Kamino. So all these Kaminoans that we know, they might kind of, you know, get it, like it's done for them. All right, so there you go. Tanwi is dead, it seems like, for sure, and out walks Fennec Shand. Now here's the interesting thing is, you know, just based on context, I don't think we were explicitly told this, but when Fennec Shand showed up and we heard about how the Kaminoans had hired a bunch of bounty hunters, we're like, okay, Fennec Shand was hired to go get Omega from the Bad Batch. And that definitely seems to have been the case at that point. But now, you know, and we learned this at the end of the episode, is that Fennec Shand has actually been hired by Nala Se. Sorry, I gotta. Nala Se. These Kaminoan names, I'm not so great with these. Anyways, basically the Doctor Kaminoan who had been looking after Omega, the one that helped them escape from Kamino in the first place when she pressed the button on the door and like opened the hatch and let them out. She has now hired Fennec Shand to make sure that Omega does not fall in the hands of the other Kaminoans because of whatever experiments they're gonna do. Speaking of which, they go into this room. They go into this mysterious room here, on this, what I think they described as an abandoned facility, right? A Kamino facility. It looked like a Kamino facility. And what we see is a bunch of different types of alien creatures. I don't know if any of them were exactly recognizable species, but they all seem just different monster type looking alien creatures. One of them slightly looked like a Kaminoan, but it might have not been. Very interesting. They are all in these green cloning tubes or experimentation tubes or something. And you know, one of them even like cracks out and it's just like a dead body that falls on Fennec Shand as Omega escapes, which is really gross. Now look, I think that they very, very intentionally designed the tubes to remind you of the vat of Snokes that you see in the Rise of Skywalker. I don't think that was an accident that it looks very similar to that. Now, all this to say is that, you know, this is an abandoned facility. It's definitely possible that the reason it's all green and nasty looking is just because, hey, it's been sitting there for a long time, and eventually, because on Kamino the vats are always like this light blue, really clean looking color, and here they're all nasty and grimy and green. So maybe they were just trying to indicate, like, yeah, these dead experimental clone, whatever this was, it's just been sitting there for a while, and that's all it was. Or maybe someone is still there experimenting on things in secret, who knows. But yeah, either way, I think it was definitely intentionally designed by the people at Lucasfilm to say, like, hey, this is just like a visual cue to, like, make you remember, hey, remember Snoke in the vats? You know, I don't think it's literally anything to do with that necessarily. Like, it's not as if they were trying to create Snoke in that moment. I'm just saying that I think visually they wanted to kind of trigger that for the audience and just show, like, a little reminder, like, hey, all this cloning stuff is kind of related to each other in a really broad way, you know, like maybe stuff that they do on Kamino later influences what the Empire is trying to do in The Mandalorian, which later influences some of the stuff that they're trying to do on Exegol. You know, like, it's all just kind of vaguely related in that cloning type of way. Anyways, so Finnick basically tells Omega that, like, hey, what the stuff that Lama Su, again, these names, I can't remember which is which, Lama Su wants to do is much worse than if you just come with me. So she's trying to take Omega away, because obviously she was hired to make sure that the other Kaminoans do not find her. Now, Finnick says, you know, Omega's like, what do they want with me? What are they trying to do? And Finnick's like, well, you know, and they kind of look at the gross looking tubes. So it's still very vague, because it's like, well, what? Say it, because I don't exactly know what they're trying to do. Are they just trying to create more clones? Are they just trying to experiment on you? I still don't know. In any case, she manages to escape from there. They have this long chase. Finnick and Cad Bane are fighting each other. And they seem on pretty equal terms. Finnick manages to outsmart Cad Bane a little bit. She causes this explosion, which he kind of gets knocked out for a while. But in any case, Omega manages to escape, and the Bad Batch arrive just in time to pick her up before her little escape shuttle that she launched herself from crashes down. And then they get away, and then they kind of talk about how, like, you know, they promise that Omega will never end up going back to Kamino, and she'll never end up as an experiment in a tube. And that's pretty much where they leave it, which, you know, it definitely feels like eventually, you know, Omega's gonna get captured again, and she's gonna get taken to Kamino, and we're gonna get more answers as to specifically what they want to do, because Omega even says, you know, they're never gonna stop looking for me. They're never gonna stop trying to send bounty hunters to capture Omega. Now, what would be really, really interesting, because they do drop this in this episode, and we do have the Book of Boba Fett coming out at the end of this year. I'm waiting for the moment of Boba Fett to get involved with this, because along with Omega, he is the one that, you know, Kamino could possibly capture and use for whatever the hell they're trying to do. You know, and it feels, I don't know, it just feels like he would be much easier to find, because he's a bounty hunter. They could literally just be like, hey, come to Kamino, you know, you grew up here, you know, we're your friends, right? We want to hire you for a job because you're a bounty hunter now. And then when he shows up, they just capture him, put him in a tube. All right, I don't know, it feels like it'd be so easy to get Boba Fett, you know. So I don't know. Now, here's my thing about all of this. Okay, I love the interplay here. I love all the, like, the backstabbing. You know, this person is trying to, you know, Nala Su, the head Kaminoan guy, he's trying to keep all of this behind wraps from the Empire, because the Empire's on Kamino trying to take over the place, trying to shut them down, trying to move on to stormtroopers. So he's trying to do something that's still unclear. Meanwhile, Lama Say over here is trying to stop that from happening because I guess she cares about Omega, or maybe she has some other reason. It definitely feels like in the Clone Wars, this character, Lama Say, she did not seem to give a damn about the clones. Like, you saw the arc with Fives and the whole him discovering Order 66 and all that. It never seemed like she gave a damn, like, at all. The clones were just property. But now she seems to really care about Omega, so I'm wondering if that's like genuine, like, oh, she actually cares, or if she has some other angle that she's like, no, I'm trying to do something else here. So I don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, this is definitely not the end of this bounty hunter thing here. You know, Cad Bane is still out there. Fennec Shand, they kind of call Fennec Shand off. They basically, or Nala Se does, basically says like, yeah, as long as Omega's not with the other Kaminoans, I'm okay with her being with the Bad Batch. So you don't need to track them. You don't need to do all this and that. I doubt this is the last time we see Fennec Shand. I'm sure this is gonna come back up again. I'm sure Cad Bane is gonna get in contact with the other Kaminoans saying like, hey, this other bounty hunter was sent by someone and they knew where to meet and they killed off, you know, they killed off your employee, Tan Wei, right? So I'm sure that's gonna raise some eyebrows, right? Like, wait, only so many people even knew that we were here, you know? So I'm sure that's gonna be a thing. Cad Bane, the second Cad Bane can tell all the rest of the Kaminoans what happened here. That's I don't know, it feels like that's definitely gonna get Lama Se caught. Anyways, so yeah, very, very interesting episode. I don't know where they go from here now. You know, more bounty hunters showing up. It feels like this is gonna be where maybe next episode is gonna be a bit of a break and they go on like a little solo adventure, and then after that they'll have like another 2 or 3 episodes strung together as like a major plot development one. But yeah, this was really, really interesting. A lot of possibilities. Oh, one last thing, because I mentioned I wanted Boba Fett to be involved here because, you know, like I said, he's equally as able to do whatever they want to do as Omega is. We see now that Cad Bane has this big metal plate on his head, which was not there previously. So I mentioned in the last episode how there was this series, this arc of episodes that was supposed to be all about Boba Fett getting his armor, and him and Cad Bane end up having this showdown, right, where they both end up shooting each other. Boba Fett gets that big dent in his helmet, and Cad Bane's fate was kind of up in the air. We didn't know what happened to him, but now we see as this metal plate, which is implying that showdown must have already happened. Which, this is not the last, or I mean, this is not the first time that this has happened, where basically completely unfinished things that have not been made yet, they kind of just pretend as if it happened still, like it's still canon because it was going to happen, even though it was an unfinished episode and no one has actually seen this happen, you know? They did this, I think, in Rebels. Like in Rebels, they mentioned events that had not happened yet. This was before season 7 of Clone Wars, obviously. So, you know, it's interesting. I can only hope then that in some form, I don't know if it's going to be a book or a comic or something, we're going to eventually actually see the finished footage of Cad Bane and Boba Fett showing down, because it appears that it has already happened in this show. I thought maybe they would just kind of shift it in the timeline and have it happen here, but I guess if it's already happened, then it's like, okay, I hope we see it one day, because it won't be in this show, I guess. So yeah, that'd be really cool. What this does mean, though, is that if Boba Fett does show up in the show, then he already has his armor, or at least he should have most of his armor if that arc has happened, because I think that's what happens in that arc. So that's pretty cool. And I hope that some of the stuff that they bring up here with Fennec Shand and Boba Fett, and maybe we will see them meet each other for the first time, some of this kind of relates back to the Book of Boba Fett, because that's coming out at the end of this year, and it feels like it'd be a really, really easy way to make some cool connections of being like, hey, we showed this thing in the Bad Batch, and then they kind of mention it in the Book of Boba Fett, because, you know, these two shows are like, what, 25 years apart, right? So it's like, I don't know, it'd be pretty cool. They can make some neat connections there between these two shows. Anyways, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this episode. I really love what's happening. I hope we don't have to wait too long to keep on seeing Kamino stuff and the Empire stuff, because that just, all of the stuff happening on Kamino feels like the meat of this show. And I'm fine when we get those episodes that are just like little one-off adventures. Like, I'm fine. You're building the family dynamic. You're getting to care more and more about each of the members of this crew. But when we do get to the meat of the show, when we do see these Kamino scenes, that's when it's really like, oh man, like it just feels like really important things are happening every second. So yeah, I really love this episode. And yeah, hopefully we get to see more of this. All right, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.